Some of those specifics you don't know, and I think you're not meant to know. You want to find someone who authentically is going to be the fit. You can't gamify things to a certain level.
You're listening to the Daily Stand-Up by Lifetime Value. Consider this your daily dose of new ideas, fresh perspectives, and or hot takes as they relate to the worlds of customer success, post-sales, or whatever the hell we're calling it these days, and where we ask each guest one simple question. What's on your mind?
What's up, lifers, and welcome to the Daily Stand-Up, where we're giving you fresh, new ideas in the customer success space every single day. I've got my man Rob here with a fresh new haircut. Rob, do you want to say hi?
What's going on, Lifetime Familia?
I've got JP with us. JP, do you want to say hi?
Hello.
So for anybody who's not watching the video, JP just suggestively wiped the corners of his mouth with a napkin. And we've got we've got Christine with us. Christine, would you like to say hi?
Hey, party people.
Yeah.
And I am your host. My name is Dylan Young. Christine, thank you so much for being here. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Be happy to. I am a customer success enthusiast who focuses mostly on helping healthcare technology companies grow. And in my spare time, I love to ride horses, garden, and eat anything low carb.
Heck yes. Heck yes.
I'll take your carbs.
Christine, you know what we're doing here. Every single day we ask one person from the customer success or adjacent spaces to tell us what is on their mind when it comes to the space. So do you want to hit us with that?
Would love to. For me, it's all about how to hire effectively in today's environment, because I'm seeing a lot of material around how to get a job and how stressful the job market is. But I think an underestimated stressor happening right now in customer success for hiring managers and for the folks who are growing is how the heck do I make any sense of the thousands of applicants coming in the door? And how do I actually interview effectively and make sure I'm finding the right person for my company and my role, particularly for those high growth companies, right? Where it's smaller, but you're looking at doubling or tripling. I feel like that right now is a topic that we should dig into.
So JP and I got in a fight about this less than 48 hours ago.
Did you take your earrings out first?
I used to have my ears pierced. I don't know if you're making
Where's my Vaseline?
for that.
Earpods coming out.
Enough.
JP put the baby powder
Ooh.
on his hand. He was ready to
serious.
slap me up. So this is a question I'm super interested to understand. My theory is that it's a little bit random right now because of just the sheer volume that we're dealing with. But what suggestions are you bringing to the table, or how do you think folks should think about it?
Yeah, for me, I got three things, and I'd love to get your thoughts if we want to go around the horn. The first thing that I think about when I think about how to hire effectively, and I learned this the hard way by conducting thousands of interviews and hiring hundreds of people as a hiring manager and exec, not a recruiter. And that is to really understand what the heck you want from this person, to define the jobs to be done, and also the key characteristics that really are going to make this person successful. So we'd love to start there in terms of like best practices or thoughts or hacks that you have for actually figuring out, oh, I have this problem. I'm just going to hire this person. They're going to solve it for me, to getting really crystal clear on exactly what it is you're looking for.
So again, I said this before we started recording. Kudos for being the most professional guest we've ever had with your lapel mic. For anybody who's not watching the video, Christine has a straight up profesh lapel mic. But secondly, for pre-facilitating by saying you want us to go around the horn. I love that. My job is super easy today. I want to start with Rob because I know that Rob has had a lot of these same experiences, has hired a lot of people. And so I'd love to hear what he thinks about what you said.
Yeah, Christine, you bring up a really, really important topic, and one that I care a lot about, and one that I've made a lot of mistakes in too. Because similarly, I've been through more interviews than I can count and hired for hundreds of positions at this point, not to toot my own horn, just to make enough mistakes to know the difference. So I think that for me, what I've been working on lately has been a recruiting playbook that tries to handle these same questions. First is around what you're hiring for. not just like the role description and the KPIs, which could be ill-defined, but also what would constitute like a culture ad is how I like to hear people phrase it. People often talk about a culture fit, but then they end up creating so much of an echo chamber at their own companies that they don't think outside the box. So it's one thing to say culture ad, but it's a whole other thing to say these are the definitive pieces that we don't have in our current operation that we want to add. Someone described it to me. I love this analogy. She said, when you look in your kitchen cupboard, you don't look for the things you already have. You look for the things you don't have. Maybe you're a little low on black pepper or cumin or whatever, right? You look for the spices that you lack. And then from there, then you can build an educated process around what are the stages, what are the questions that you're asking this person. But I think one of the hardest things is the third phase, which is then something I care a lot about, is like removing the unconscious company biases out of the process, which is really hard. Because you have to build a process that people can fail out of, basically. Like the inherent thing that makes an interview process good, as harsh as this might sound, is that people have to be able to fail out of it. Otherwise, everyone would get the job. But you have to do that in such a way that's not unfairly biased against people who have certain ways of thinking, certain backgrounds, certain whatevers. I don't know that I've figured out an exact repeatable playbook for that, or if I ever should. But I'm curious to get the thoughts of the other folks in the room on that as well.
Is that supposed to be me?
Antagonist number one, JP Frost. Why don't you go ahead?
There's a really silly there's a really silly adage out there. Is people want to work with people they want to work with. It's super like, sort of okay.
Meta. Very
but
meta.
I mean, people want to work with who they want to work with. I think that speaks a bit to what Rob mentioned as a culture ad, right? I know that there's a certain, if there's a Venn diagram, there's a certain circle I know that I want to take care of, right? That's going to be like, okay, you're going to be in general a desirable candidate. But for this particular role, this particular company, you start adding on more filters, almost like when you go into the eye doctor and they're like, okay, can you see this? What is it? You're like, oh, it looks like a bologna sandwich. It's like, oh my God, that's a lobster. You failed out of the process. You know what I mean? Got to be able to sort of like, okay, are we seeing the same thing? And so I think this quote unquote fight that me and Dylan got into, it's definitely an air quote fight. Because I agree that there is the idea of randomness, I think, is as a candidate, there are things beyond what I can control and what I know. There's things like I could have done my very best, but what Rob needs at his company, I failed out of. Doesn't mean that I'm a terrible person or that I may not be a good worker, but that process in particular, like I failed out of. That's a result of timing. Maybe at a different point, I may not have failed out of that process. So I think that on my end, when you talk about the messaging people see, is that it's not nuanced enough to really address what's happening. Certain things, they're more transferable no matter which jobs you go to, but some of those specifics you don't know. And I think to Rob's point, like you're not meant to know. Like you want to find someone who authentically is going to be the fit. You can't really gamify things to a certain level. So I feel like in summation, I see you, Rob. Sorry, not Rob, Dylan. I get them confused. Don't tell anyone.
Just a generic white dude. Right?
I didn't say anything. So
his hair looks better these days.
You're ruining my point. My point is, you just go on ahead, man.
Well,
go
so
on.
let me
say what you're gonna say, Rob. I mean, Dylan.
Thank you. Thanks for committing to the bit. I think we're using a lot of tactics that were good and suitable in a different market. And the word I got from Christine, where you started, Rob said it, and then JP as well, from all these different angles, is intentionality. And I think a lot of times we're still just slapping together a job description and putting it out there. And we're like, okay, well, how do we find the guy who has that 10 years or more of experience in this particular space? And we think he's got a decent personality, he or she, right? And nowadays, when you just have such a volume of candidates, you're going to find 20 of those people. you've got to find a further way to whittle it down and find what makes the most sense for you. So, Christine, with the little time we have left, I just want to understand what you took away from two Robs and a JP, what we had to say, and what you've done to combat this and kind of work around it.
Yeah, well, love that. Thank you for the roundup. Number one, be intentional 100% all day, every day. Really get crisp about what you're wanting. Number two, to JP's point, be specific about the filters in your interview process. Build an ironclad one. Rob would love to see your hiring process guide. Would love to compare notes there. And then for me, number three, if you want to hire great people, write great interview questions and ask the same questions for every candidate to avoid your biases creeping in. We don't want that. So within those questions, look at behavioral interview questions or open-ended questions that give you a better perception on how that person shows up, how they see themselves, and how they'll fit into your broader team. And then if you really run the process, you're going to close the best candidates because you know what you want, you know how to assess for what you want, and you're going to show up as a professional and run a really tight process. So those top candidates who have lots of opportunities are going to choose you because you never left them on red for 7 days while you were wondering what you wanted to do next, right? You were really running it. And that's, I think, how you're going to be successful as a hiring manager in this environment.
Amen. Christine, that's our time. Thank you so much. This was a tight episode, and we got a lot of information in there. You came prepared. So thank you so much. Would love to have you back. Yes, round of applause. Thanks again.
On the show, man. I'm making another host.
It's getting crowded in here, guys. But Christine, seriously, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to meet you. Would love to have you back. But until then, ta-ta for now.
Thanks Dylan. Thanks JP. Thanks Rob. Or other Dylan. Bye guys.
You've been listening to The Daily Stand-Up by Lifetime Value. Please note that the views expressed in these conversations are attributed only to those individuals on this recording and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of their respective employers. For all inquiries, please reach out via email to dylan@lifetimevaluemedia.com. Find us on YouTube at Lifetime Value and find us on the socials at Lifetime Value Media. Until next time.
Hey folks, it's Dylan here. Thank you for tuning in as always. Now I've got a favor to ask of you. If you've made it this far, hopefully it means you like what we're doing with our program. So I'm asking you to please give this a like and a follow or a subscribe and leave a comment too. Your likes and your follows and your subscriptions, they allow us to keep doing what we're doing and reach a larger audience. Your comments help us make sure that we're making the best content for you. Best of all, it's free besides a few moments of your time. Thank you again for following along and we'll see you next time.